have to set the record straight on something. There was some misinformation put out on my podcast, The Sean Ryan Show, in regards to the Hurricane Helene episode. And I need to set the record straight on that. It was put out on the podcast that Vice President Harris went to North Carolina to pose on a C-17, that's a cargo plane full of supplies that were never intended to reach the hurricane victims. That's how it was put out on the podcast. Friday morning, we received a message on social media from a crew member on that bird, that plane, that said that that was only partially true. The supplies never left that day because that specific plane broke down. They ushered the supplies to a different plane, and that was delivered the very next day. Now, I reached back out to my guest to reconfirm with his source, which was an officer in that National Guard unit, that the original story was correct, and the source did confirm that the story of the bird never intending to leave was correct. Well, now it's Sunday morning, and more news has developed, to include the flight logs of those birds in a statement released by the National Guard unit. And so I need to correct the error here. Those supplies were, yes, they were delivered to the hurricane victims. And I want to say something. You know, we live in a time where I think a lot of people are getting information from podcasts because they don't believe the mainstream media. And I'm one of them. But if we put out misinformation, guess what? We're no better than the mainstream. And so that's something you guys need to think about when you're putting information out. And when you're an active service member putting misinformation out. That's a disgrace. And yes, I do have my own biases and opinions, but I would never, ever, ever put my own biases and opinions above my own honesty and integrity. Because without that, you have nothing. You have a world where you can't believe anything you see or hear, which is very similar to what we're living in right now. I started this podcast to be a beacon of truth, to bring real news to as many people as they want to watch. And I would never intentionally put out misinformation. And so my apologies to everyone that was affected by that and everybody that watched that and believed that false information. And so this is me setting the record straight. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.